Hello, my name is Roisin and it is July, so it is time for the mid-year freakout tag. I will leave the original linked in the description if you'd like to go and check it out, along with all of the questions, so feel free to answer those in the comments or consider yourself tagged. I don't think people really tag in this video anymore, but I have some questions, so let's go and answer them. The first question is the best book you've read so far in 2023, and I did make a video of my best books, which will be linked in the cards above, but the two that have made it to the top are On Beauty by Zadie Smith, which is a retelling of Howard's End, and Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, which is a retelling of David Copperfield, which I noticed when I did that video of my top 10 favourites, that my top 2 favourites were retellings of Victorian Edwardian novels, which I thought was interesting. But I do also love Zadie Smith and Barbara Kingsolver's writing. I have loved books from both of those writers before, White Teeth for Zadie Smith and The Poisonwood Bible for Barbara Kingsolver, so they definitely are favourites of mine. They're also both really chunky books, and as you may know, this is the year of big books for me. I started the Big Book Club, where I will leave all the information for that in the cards above, the Discord in the description. We read books over 500 pages every 2 months. But yeah, I've definitely enjoyed settling in with some books for a while. On Beauty is the story of 2 families involved in academics in a not very subtly camouflaged Harvard University, and their foibles and their sexual relationships and their interactions with race and class and nationality, the difference between UK and US, affirmative action, all sorts of things. It's a really wonderful book. Demon Copperhead is about the story of one boy who is growing up in Appalachia in the 90s and early 2000s, and his dealing with the opioid crisis and his interactions with that. And it is a really just wonderful, such a voicey book, and I really loved both of them. Question number 2 is the best sequel you've read so far. I have only read 1 sequel so far, and I think I will probably only read 1 more. I don't really read a lot of books that lend themselves to sequels, but I have started the Lymond Chronicles, which is a series by Dorothy Dunnett from the 60s and 70s. It is a historical fiction series. The first one is The Game of Kings, which I always get confused with Game of Thrones, but this is older than Game of Thrones. So the first one is Game of Kings, the second one that I read this year is Queen's Play, and this is about Lymond, who is a Scottish nobleman who in the first one has been exiled from Scotland for an accusation against him, and in the second one is hired by the Queen Mother to go to the French court because she thinks that there is a plot against her daughter Mary Queen of Scots, which, if you know anything about Scottish history, there were a lot of plots against Mary Queen of Scots. So it is kind of a swashbuckling adventure novel. He's dressed up as someone else, so for the first quarter of the novel you don't know where he is. You have to try and work it out yourself. You're not certain where he is. There's a lot of adventures. There is a steeplechase across the roofs of this French city, can't remember which one, and so there are intrigues and mysteries and adventure and humour and romance, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a really great fun series if you are interested in historical fiction. Brilliantly written, very plotty, for a fun read, it's my perfect kind of fun read. Question number 3 is new release you haven't read yet but want to. So this is ones that have already come out that you haven't made it to. I recently put on my new releases The Centre by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui, which is about a centre that teaches you to be fluent in a language in 10 days, and we have I think she's a Pakistani British translator and her white British boyfriend, and he reveals how he learns all these languages. She gets involved with this centre, and I'm really intrigued by it. And then Hannah May has been reviewing it on her Instagram stories recently, and she really loved it, so that's put me on to want to read that. The other 2, I have Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor, which is a kind of rompy long book set in Delhi about a rich family and their involvement with crime, I think, and I've had that on the Libra FM influencer program since December last year, I think, so I really want to get around to reading that. And then there is also The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese, which I put on my anticipated releases, and that one is set in Kerala, so they're both Indian books, and I am really intrigued by it, so maybe I should do a video where I read them both, since they are both, from a similar part of the world. Delhi and Kerala are quite far away from each other, but still. Number 4 is most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. One that I forgot to mention in my anticipated releases video, which I will leave linked to the cards above, but the one I forgot to mention is Peach Pit, which is a collection of short stories that has been edited by my friend Molly Llewellyn, who is Moles by Moonlight over on Instagram, and I forgot to mention it in that, but that is coming out in September. I've already pre-ordered it and I'm very excited for it. It is like monstrous women, villainous women short story collection by loads of really famous writers, so I'm definitely really excited to read that one. Also Chain Gang All Stars, which I think may already be out by the time this video comes up, but it is one that I have seen loads of people talking about. It's been all over Bookstagram, and it is about like a gladiatorial fight club in the prison system in America, and I've just heard brilliant things about it, so I really want to give that one a go. Rouge by Mona Awad is one that I am really intrigued by. Everyone seems to be really excited by it, but I didn't like Bunny, so I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's gonna be for me, but it feels like it's gonna be for me, and I love the cover, love it so much, kind of want it just for that reason. And then the final one is The Glutton by A.K. Blakemore. A.K. Blakemore wrote The Manningtree Witches, which I read last year, the year before, I can't remember, but I really loved, and that was a 17th century English witch hunt novel, like during the Civil War, and The Glutton is also historical fiction. Travels from the south of France to Paris and beyond through the heart of the Revolution, or in the French Revolution at times, which is a period of history I'm interested in. Definitely want to give it a go. Biggest disappointment. So this is an interesting question because I always think biggest disappointment is not the same as least favourite book. It is one you are super excited for. One of those for me is Whale by Chon Myung-kwan, and that was on the Booker Prize, International Booker Prize shortlist. People have raved about it. Kieran, who never likes anything, liked it. Nathan from Nathan's Nook, Matthew Sharapat, they all loved this book. And it also sounded like so much up my street. It is a family saga about 3 women from this family in Korea over the course of the 20th century, with a lot of like magical realism, and it's very like of the body and trauma, and kind of weaving in folk tales and folklore. All of my like buzzwords were being hit by this book. Sorry, my camera died, but I think I was saying that Whale was just fine. It just didn't really work for me. I'm not sure what it was. I felt like could be the translation. The writing just felt a little clunky and uncomfortable, and not in a good way. It is a book that is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable, but it made me feel uncomfortable on a syntax level rather than on a subject matter level, and I just didn't really get it. It just didn't really work for me. It felt too contrived. It was just constantly reminding me of 100 Years of Solitude, and just didn't feel like it was as good. So yeah, I just didn't love it, unfortunately. Another one was The Furrows by Namwali Sapel, because I loved The Old Drift by Namwali Sapel so much. And The Furrows is her second novel, which is set in America, about a girl whose brother dies, and she tells you, it goes through different sort of iterations of how she felt and her experience of it, how she had experienced it as a preteen. But I kind of knew going in that this was a disappointing read for a lot of people, and that there was a twist in the middle that changes the way the book is, and I thought maybe I would feel differently about it because of how much I had previously loved Sapel's work, but I didn't. I felt the same. The twist didn't work for me. Biggest surprises? I would say that The Giant O'Brien by Hilary Mantel surprised me, even though probably it shouldn't have surprised me because I love Hilary Mantel, and so I was primed to like this as well. But it's a novella of hers that I haven't heard much about a very tall Irish man in the 17th century who comes to London with a troupe of friends to make his fortune, and the Scottish physician who wants to claim his body, who is involved in the like grave digging for medical research purposes that was going on in the 17th century, and wants to claim this Irish man's body, and it is about colonialism and the British claiming ownership over a lot of Irish things, and it is also about Irish folklore and kind of their magical belief and the violence, that combination that always exists in magical realism of magic that is truly believed by people and is treated completely as normal and understood as being part of the world, and also the extreme violence and the absurdity of violence, and it has a lot of humour as well, and I loved it so much, and I just wasn't expecting to. because I hadn't heard anyone really talking about it. And the other one is Black Butterflies by Priscilla Morris, which is not a book that I like wholeheartedly loved or anything, but it is a book that surprised me how much I did enjoy it, considering it is a style of writing that I usually don't like very much. It is that very simplistic style of writing that isn't doing anything. Like the book itself is more about character and plots. It is set during the siege of Sarajevo during the Bosnian War in the 90s, and it is from the perspective of an older woman who is an artist who is in, she's Serbian, but she lives in a tower block with a lot of Bosnians and Croats as well. And it's just telling that story. It's a very simple story and it's very simply told. The writing is not beautiful and it is not interesting. It's not really doing anything with the writing. It is that kind of commercial fiction style of writing, but I think it was done really well and really effectively in this book, and I was surprised because usually that style of writing tires me out. Favourite new author, debut or new to me? Well, debut author that I have loved this year is Louise Kennedy. I read her novel Trespasses for the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist video that I did, and I will leave that linked in the cards above. This is again another one that I was probably primed to love. I've been wanting to read more Northern Irish fiction because, as I've mentioned many times before, my mum is from Derry, so half of my family are from the north of Ireland, and that history, that period of time, this book is set in the early 70s about a teacher named Kusha, and the children in her class are 6 or 7, and so my mum would also have been about 6 or 7 at the time that the book is written. So it is very much set when my family was there and was experiencing similar things to what is going on in the novel. It is about this teacher who starts to have an affair with an older Protestant barrister, and it is really just about Ireland at the time and about the different mentalities and ideas, whether that's within this Catholic family and the kind of old-fashioned sexism that was very prevalent at the time, the alcoholism and the coping mechanisms because of the extremes of the society, and also the ways that violence was inherent and was normalised and also was really easy to be drawn into, particularly as a young man. Yeah, I just thought it was wonderful, so wonderfully written, and it made me cry. It's the only book this year to have made me cry. So yeah, definitely, I think it was wonderful. Newest fictional crush, not really applicable. I haven't really read any books. Well, I have read some books where you would have a crush on someone if that was for you. But I mean, I've read 2 romance books and I have hated both of them this year, so one of them I DNF'd actually. So yeah, it's not really applicable. Newest favourite character, that would be Demon Copperhead, or he's actually called Damon, I can't remember his real surname, but Demon Copperhead. He is such an endearing and realistic character. He is so well-rounded and fully fleshed out, and his voice, it just feels so real and as if he is writing the story. It is wonderfully poetic and beautiful, but he is also such a resilient and interesting and difficult character, and I really enjoyed that. Also, I would probably say Saul Indian Horse from Indian Horse as well is another character where the voice of the book really made me feel connected to the character, and it is a novel, but it reads like non-fiction, like a memoir, even though it is not autofiction or anything. It is pure fiction, although based around Richard Wamakese's family life and the experience of being a First Nations person in Canada in the 1960s and being taken to residential schools. It is all based on true facts, but it is fictionalised person, and yet the person feels so well realised. A book that made you cry, well, I've already said the only book that made me cry was Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. A book that made you happy. I haven't read that many books that made me happy this year, mostly frustrated, or like, I love Demon Copperhead, but it is an infuriating novel because of the structures of society and poverty and cycles of abuse and things. So it definitely didn't make me happy, even though I loved it. And the same with The Giant O'Brien. Again, I really enjoyed it, but it is another infuriating novel about the British Empire. On Beauty, I guess On Beauty made me happy, even though it is a lot of frustrating, terrible people doing terrible things. They're not entirely terrible. They are terrible in a really human way that makes them really relatable, and it does have a lot of humour. I think Zadie Smith is very funny, and the kind of comedy of manners element that she brings forward from Forster, I think, is really amusing, and there's a lot of amusing incidences and kind of embarrassing cringe incidences, which I find easier to read about than watch, because I can't do secondhand embarrassment when it comes to like TV and films, but I really I think I handled it in this book, and I enjoyed this book, and it definitely amused me. I'm not sure if I laughed out loud, but it definitely did amuse me. Most beautiful book you've bought or so far this year? I don't know. I have bought, I really like this edition of the Year of Magical Thinking, and it is actually from the same, they are the Collins Modern Classics edition. So I have this one of Beyond Black and this one of the Year of Magical Thinking. I like the Year of Magical Thinking a little more. I think I left my copy of The Seas upstairs, but I quite enjoy that one too. It's got a mermaid on it, and I love that this year. Babel, I suppose, is quite pretty. And Our Share of Night, I think that's got quite a good vibe, and I enjoy the kind of creepy hand on there. I think so. And Babel is somewhere. Babel is somewhere, but I'm not going to find it. But it's got foil on it as well. So I think both of those are fairly attractive. What books do I need to read by the end of the year? Well, I need to read Our Share of Night, The Shock Doctrine, and Babel, which is the one I'm not going to look for. But these are the big book club books for the end of the year. So this is July and August. This is our spooky book for September and October. And then Babel is the one we're reading in November and December. So again, as I said, all the information will be in the cards if you want to go and check out that. If you fancy reading some Naomi Klein with us, a little spooky translated Our Share of Night, or the hyped up fantasy, completely outside of my comfort zone, Babel, yeah, you can join us. There will be a Discord link in the description if you want to check that out. And then finally is your favourite book community member, and I think rather than my favourite, I think I'm going to shout out, I mean, I do like all of these people, but there are 4 booktubers that I have started following in the last few months that I have really enjoyed their booktube stuff. I've been looking for new booktubers recently, and like these are 4, they are literary fiction readers. They read stuff, some of them read stuff that maybe I haven't seen elsewhere, and so there's Nathan from Nathan's Nook, who is going to be reading Our Share of Night with us for the Big Book Club. He lives in Seoul, although he talks about being from California a lot, and so there's a lot of vlogs of Seoul, but also he has really interesting thoughts and ideas about the books that he is reading, and I really enjoy listening to him talk. Then there's also Biblio Sophie. She's French, but she vlogs in English. So her vlogs are often in France. A lot of the ones I've been watching recently, the French countryside and Paris. It's been enjoyable to watch, and again, she reads similar books to Nathan, I would say. They've both been reading Clarice Lispector this year, which has made me want to read Clarice Lispector, and so I've been enjoying their work. And then Literary Iggy, who again, from her channel name you can tell she is a literary fiction reader. She lives in BC in Canada. She's a Canadian booktuber. They're very like slow, calm videos. I think I really enjoyed that from her, and her thoughts I find very engaging to listen to. And then Anna Wallace Johnson, who has a really great aesthetic. I love all of her thumbnails. She is a New Yorker, and again talks about books that I maybe haven't seen necessarily other people talking about on BookTube, so it's been interesting to watch hers as well. That is the tag for the mid-year freakout tag. Let me know your answer to the questions in the comments down below, or if you've done this video, let me know. And I will see you again very soon. I put out new videos twice a week, so please remember to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.